everybody, this is Angela Savage, the daughter of IndyCar driver Swede Savage. It's time to watch stories from motorsports. My buddy, Doug Kenny, loves to share the journey of people in racing, and he is an amazing dude. Drivers, owners, fans, and team members, watch the SFM podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny from Stories from Motorsports. I'd like to thank my buddy Josh Mabe for the YouTube work he did years ago that inspired me to create this platform. I'd like to thank my buddy Victor Sifton for convincing me to get back into it after my hiatus from 2017 to 2019. I have a very special treat for you all today with an amazing journey from an amazing racing figure. Drivers, start your engines.
Ron Fellows, Johnny O, Andy, Kelly Collins, all the Corvette racing guys, Frank Freon. And actually, you have to be remiss, we had, it was, Scott Sharp, John Heinrichsey drove a little bit, John Paul Jr. was some of the original guys. But, so yeah, the Corvette racing in the early days, it was an interesting time. It was great to be part of what's obviously become one of the, most epic teams in sports car racing history. And it was nice to, play a small part in that. But a little bit of trivia. So the first driver to ever turn a wheel in a Corvette racing car, the C5R, was me. I was the first driver to ever turn a wheel for Corvette racing. It was me on actually a snowy day at Grattan Raceway in Michigan. And in those days, things were a lot different because it was, we technically didn't exist in those days. This would have been in 1997, maybe, long before anyone had ever heard of Corvette racing. We were out there getting ourselves ready, but the Pratt Miller, they towed around with a Ford dually, and just a regular, small, 35 or so foot gooseneck, fifth wheel trailer, and no graphics or anything, and so we didn't even, they literally didn't even tow the race car with a GM dually or a Chevy dually. That's how we literally didn't exist, so no one could call us anything. But so I was the first one to turn a wheel, and then Ron was next on board, and it was actually Doug Feehan, who was the program manager for many years, up until a couple years ago. Doug came up to me and said we're gonna sign Ron Fellows. I'm like, oh, fantastic. And he goes, are you all right with that? Because you guys are going to be working together. I said, no. I said, that's awesome. He goes, but you guys are all right because Ron and I were rivals in the Trans Am series. And I say rivals. We weren't even friends. And I don't say that we weren't friends because we didn't like each other. I mean, we weren't friends because we didn't know each other. But there were times that we, got into it on the track and, probably left a little butthurt and whatnot. And we were rivals, but there was no animosity or whatever. But so I'm going, well, this is great. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I'm in my late 30s, age-wise. I don't give a rip, I'm not looking for the next big jump in my career at this point. And Ron's basically the same age as me. So we're kind of in the same boat here, we don't need to jump over each other, to get to our next step. We can actually work together and make this a great team. And, but that's just what I thought, I hadn't obviously talked to Ron about this, but so anyways, long story short, we end up, obviously Corvette signed Ron. That goes without saying. It's the biggest star they've had ever. And, So we ended up at the first test that we were doing at Daytona, and it was just us. And when I say just us, I mean it was just a small group of Pratt and Miller people and the race car and me and Ron. And we had Goodyear there and we had fuel there, and we were there for I think 5 days. We ran 5 days, and I think, what did we do? We actually ran 4 days, six hours a day. So we did a 24-hour race and then plus a little bit. It was after the first day, Ron and I were standing in the garage, and we were like the only ones standing there, and we sort of looked at each other. Obviously, during the course of the day, we didn't talk to each other because either he was in the car or I was in the car, and we just back and forth. So it's not like we would stand around and talk to each other. We never saw each other. So finally, we're like, hey, you want to go out for dinner? And so we did, and that actually was the beginning of what became a very, very good friendship, and to this day, I would consider him one of my best, closest friends, even though it was one of those, it was a short, we didn't know each other that long before we really became good friends, but it was pretty instantaneous, and that was like I said with the Indy 500 stuff, it was the people. It was the people on the Pratt and Miller team, the guys, the truck drivers, JR and all the guys. The camaraderie is what made it so special. But, it was great the first year, with John Paul Jr., Ron, and myself in the long races. That was just such an awesome group, the three of us, and we were all sort of taller drivers. So, fitting in the car, they were able to dial that in for us. And, that was probably my favorite trio was Ron, myself, and John Paul Jr. Of the different driver combinations. That was probably my favorite one. That was cool. And then, as you started off mentioning, we ended up, before I left the team in 2001 to go work for CART, taking over for Wally Dallenbach as chief steward of CART. I did that. Sebring would have been my last race in 01. But that became, Johnny O'Connell took the place of Justin Bell, who was with us in 2000. So O'Connell came in, and then when I left, Scott Pruitt came in. So basically they bumped Johnny up from basically the 2 slot, which is where I was, moved Johnny up, and then brought Pruitt in to do the long races. So that was all good. But yeah, so we had some really good driver combinations and pairs, and interestingly, it was pretty. We didn't spend a lot of time with our sister car. The Andy Pilgrim, Kelly Collins group. They sort of did their thing. We did our thing, and it wasn't. We did not spend time with them because, again, it's not because we didn't like them or whatever. But they did their stuff. We did our stuff, and it was sort of one of those things that when you leave the track and you go to dinner, you're still sort of downloading and debriefing, and the stuff that we were talking about wouldn't necessarily pertain to them, and vice versa. Anything that they'd be discussing would have nothing to do with us. So you sort of don't, you just don't mix that much, even though you're all wearing the same shirt. It's everything you do is sort of locked in and separated to the car that you belong to.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit like and subscribe if you did so, and please continue supporting our amazing guest. And everybody, we'll see you next time on SFM.
Hi, this is Ted Warner speaking. While the checkered flag is waved for this program, stay tuned for next week for the next episode of SFM. Thanks to Doug Kenny for what he does for motorsports.